So we are doing this. Here we are, the first official Engrained podcast.
I think we should start off by explaining what Engrained is, what grain is, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of people, obviously, that haven't heard that explanation. So I think just for starters, Grain Creative, founded 2020, and I'll let you do the whole background story and all of that. But we're a creative agency that offers a few different services that ranges from creative direction, photography, production. We're getting into more of that side. PR, we do design, social media management. So that's just a few of the things that we offer here. And I think from that, we've learned a lot along the way and just felt like a podcast was the perfect place to talk about everything, all of our learnings. And so Engrained is definitely something that you have spearheaded, and it's all from you. So I feel like you should start off by maybe explaining a little bit deeper about Grain and how it came to be, and then how Engrained came to be as well.
So Grain was started 3 years ago, really just myself. And then about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, actually at this time, we scaled the company into now, over the last year, it's now 7 of us women working for Grain with all the services that you just spoke about. But we have this audience or a following that, for as small of a community as it is, like everyone's pretty engaged with what we do, and we love engaging with them back. And so podcast felt like the natural next step for the long form content that we do. The way we're differentiating this and the way that we internally are trying to talk about it is like, Grain is our services. So everything that we do for our clients. So Engrained is really like our way of speaking to our community. And I think in this podcast, we obviously don't know where we're heading exactly right now, but I know right now our goal with the next few podcasts lined up are to talk about marketing insights. Of course, we'll talk about our take on the current marketing landscape, influencer marketing, and every different area of expertise that we have at Grain. I think that will come naturally to us. But we also just want to give you more of an authentic look inside what it's even like to work at Grain, because it is fun. And it's interesting, and there's always something happening, but also just the weeds of a startup, because it's wild.
Yeah, no, I feel like we've talked about this separately, but definitely like the content that we are creating for Grain or Engrained, as we've talked, we've kind of differentiated the two and how those look different. But for Engrained especially, it's almost like us figuring this podcast out is what we are talking about.
That's the journey.
Yeah, that is the journey itself.
I think that's what's interesting. And a lot of people that follow us are really interested in what we're doing, are also on their own career journeys, whether they're entrepreneurs or they're in the marketing field or they're designers or they're content producers. It's such a unique place to be, specifically in startup, specifically in marketing, and then working in kind of an environment with 7 women who are all super aligned and hard workers. My founding journey of this has been absolutely wild, and we'll be getting into a lot of that as well. So I think some of that's going to be helpful for different entrepreneurs
100%.
as well. But Engrained is a look into our personal lives as professionals, founders, young women, women who are looking to build their careers, but also we're significant others, we're friends. A lot of us want to be moms. So I think there's so much that we can speak to that is outside of Grain. It's outside of just our marketing expertise or our creative. It's more into a behind the scenes look into who we are. And some of that's going to be in the office, and then a lot of that's going to be outside the office. I think something that people don't really have a huge view into, like people don't get to see the way we communicate with each other in our office. And that is the most special thing to me about this whole company.
Yeah.
The entire reason now that we even have Grain is because I genuinely love working with you guys and just like talking to you and having that dialogue. And so I think it's going to be cool to be able to bring people into that.
Yeah, no, and I think there's always this idea of like what it's like to work at any company, but definitely we've gotten a lot of feedback like, oh my gosh, it looks so amazing to work at Grain, and it is like 1000%, but we're never showing the side where we are struggling.
So much work.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. people asking, what is it like to work at Grain? You can't deny that it's a lot of work. It's so much work. But we have a crew of people who really actually enjoy hard work.
Yeah.
And we can see what we're all building together. So you're in the office, like if you were a fly on the wall to our conversations, it's hilarious. It's funny. It's like nail biting. We're getting insights into like, what are you wearing today? Or where is this from? So we're constantly influencing each other, which I think is a really cool thing to bring that influencer type of mindset, but to the realistic level of like friends and your colleagues.
Okay. Let's talk about how we first met.
Let's go way back. Okay. So I'll go over kind of my career path and then I want to speak to yours too, because they're very different, but we actually met each other along the way in our own different career journeys. So everyone has always talked about how Grain is very editorial. It's like the word that we get over and over, editorial, New York. Really cool to see New York type of style in Nashville. So I began modeling at age 13. I'm from Central Illinois, but I would model up in Chicago and New York. So that has greatly influenced, I just think, my taste. But I ended up actually, this is just as important, I think. And I think it's something that people don't talk about enough, but it also happens all the time. I got married when I was super young to the wrong person. It was what everyone else in my hometown was doing. I had gone off and modeled, and then I wanted something stable. I was kind of sick of like the rejection, the crazy environment of it all. And I came back home and I married this guy that I knew for like 3 months. It was awful. And that relationship, it just developed me so much. Like his family believed that like women shouldn't work. And so I was in this position where I was just stuck at home and he was actually deployed. So I was so bored and I had all this time to think about, not only was the marriage itself just toxic, but I was like, is this all I'm ever going to do? Like I have all these ideas and I love to model still. And I would flip through the magazines and I would see all the editorials that I love. And then I just felt like I was so stagnant in it. The marriage itself disintegrated. And I packed up with my cat and I left and I moved to North Carolina. And so during this time of my life, I was 21 and I decided to kind of work part-time and like just gather myself. So I stayed with my aunt and uncle. They treated me like I was 17 again. And I just really got the chance to like be a kid and think about what am I going to do with my life. I had applied to this internship during that time to a digital marketing agency in Franklin, which is right outside Nashville, which is actually where you're from, which is kind of cool. But so I moved here for that. Like a month after I applied, I got the job right on the spot. And then I literally just moved all my stuff to Nashville and moved in with my dad who lived here. And I just started marketing. Like I didn't have any experience. I just threw myself into it.
Yeah. Okay, wait, I'm going to stop you. So marketing, why marketing? You could have maybe jumped into anything.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I just felt like I always had kind of an eye for marketing, and with modeling, you're kind of marketing yourself the whole time. And that was at the time that Instagram had just come out. And as you know now, like if you're in the modeling world, it's all about your social platform at this time with modeling. So it had just kind of taken off and I thought I had some experience in it. And I loved editorials still. Like I was still really in the space of fashion and editorials and magazines and wanting to do that. So this internship, I started as a digital content producer. I started as an intern, then was hired on as a digital content producer. And I did that for like 2 months before they hired me on as editor and like account manager or something like that. And basically it was also a startup. So I wore a ton of different hats as well. I ended up leaving there, getting back into modeling a little bit in Nashville, which is just like country music videos. And then I applied to work for a woman who owned a boutique branding agency, which was really interesting. And I learned a lot through that experience, but that was very part-time. And so that relationship with that woman led me to really one of the most pivotal moments in my career, which was managing editor of a local luxury media publication here.
Yeah.
I was hired on right as managing editor. But again, I had no experience. I was never assistant editor. I never had experience in that. I could write and I was a writer. Another thing I don't think people talk about enough is that I was fired from that position right before 2020. I want to say I was let go, but I was fired. The owner and I have basically come to an understanding now that it wasn't totally fair what had happened, but it was such a pivotal moment in my career because like looking back on that experience, I tell my husband all the time, I learned so much from that, and it has certainly helped me in owning and
For
operating
sure.
Grain.
Yeah.
My experience from that led me into just applying for all these jobs. And because I was hired on at such a high level with zero experience, I could not get a job. Then 2020 hit. It was March 2020, and all these different restaurants started asking me, hey, can you help us market? Like, we don't know what to do in this time. Everything's shut down. Can you do our socials, our website, our content? Like, you have an eye for this. And I was like, no, I'm an editor. That's what I do. I can't do this for you. And eventually I was just so desperate. I was like, sure. I just started saying yes. Like, okay, yeah, sure. I can do that. I can do that. And then I kept getting referral after referral. And it just kind of took off from there. So at the end of 2020, I don't know what got into me, but I just said, I'm going to make this like a business. And so I got an LLC, turned it into an actual business, and started hiring someone to like help me part time. That basically brings us to 3 years ago at this point. In the last year since that time, we've just really scaled up. I hired an amazing team, and that kind of brings us up to speed to where we are now. So I never actually answered your question. Peyton and I met because she hired me to model for the company that she was working for at the time, which I feel like is a great place to tee you up to talk about your career journey.
I took more of a traditional route with just going to school. I think that's what I was taught, like you go get your degree and you find a job. So I went to school, I got my degree in graphic design, which took a little bit longer, but I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do when I first went to school. Ultimately decided on something creative. I felt like that really spoke to my personal interests. And so, yes, graduated with my degree in graphic design. And then it took me about a year to find a full-time position. And a part of that is because I was doing videography and photography on the side, and that was supplementing, myself financially, and it worked. But also, I had a few open positions that I could have taken, and it just didn't feel like exactly what I wanted to do. So because I was doing that on the side, I felt like I could kind of hold off a little
Be a
bit
little
longer.
pickier.
Yeah, exactly. So my mom was constantly sending me stuff. I moved back in with her after college, and I think she was like, here's a job. So she actually sent me an Indeed link to a position at Uncommon James that was content associate. She sent me that link, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this, but I'll apply, sure. And so I applied. I got a first interview, an email back for a first interview. The whole process, I was like, there's just no way. And so I think that honestly helped me, because I was going into these interviews like, here I am, this is who I am, the way I'm getting this position, but sure, I'll just like take the interview. And I ended up, after 3 rounds of interviews, getting the position. I definitely, throughout each email that I received back, was like, no way, no way, no way. And even when I took the position, I was like, there's no way I'm going to last. Like, I will, maybe make it 3 months, just make it 3 months. That's what I told myself. 3 months into it, Kristen made me full time. Started off as content associate, and then design manager, and then creative manager, and then senior creative producer. At this time, I was less into graphic design, and I was getting more into the photo shoot side, which I just kind of found myself in mistakenly, and I was enjoying it. And I think Kristen saw that too. So she just kind of like helped me get there. I think I like always looked up to her, and I saw how involved she was on the creative side, and that inspired me to take that route. I mean, I was already there in my own personal life, but I think that the way that she was so involved inspired me to kind of like tap into more of that involvement of it as well. So yeah, definitely. Towards like 2-3 years into my position there, I was already doing, I felt like, art direction, and that was kind of like where I was like working to get to. So I ended up, it was about the 4-year mark, getting the position of art director. And at the same time, I'm also trying to explore maybe other things in my career. Or just basically, I was at this point, I was just asking myself, what's next for me? So like, even if I do get that title, like I have already kind of been working in art direction and production for a while at this specific company, like what else can I do for my portfolio? I think that's also the way that I was trained to think since college, is like, are you building your portfolio? Are you
Yeah.
building your portfolio? Are you expanding? Like, what are the things that you're adding to your portfolio? I think around this time, ironically, you had also put up a post about looking for a content creator, I think. And so I responded to you and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work out, but like, I just want to talk to you and I want to like pick your brain on what you're hoping this role can be and see if I can maybe like jump in or help out in any way. And so that's whenever you and we ended up getting coffee on a Sunday and just were talking about this, what you were looking for. And you were able to deep dive into like your journey and bring me up to speed with all of that. And I was like, every single time we spoke to you, it was like, I still don't know if this is going to work, but like, let's just see where it takes me and where it takes you.
So exactly. So you were hired, or we were hiring for a content creator, and then Peyton applies, and we were just like, holy shit, like Peyton's applying to this position. And I had worked with you and I'd always looked up to you. So I literally was like, yes, can you meet tomorrow? I think it was, which was a Sunday. And you met me, which throughout my other, like the rest of my hiring process, there's not a ton of people that are willing to meet you on Sundays. So you met me for coffee on a Sunday. And as you were talking, I just kept thinking to myself, she's way overqualified for a content creator position, which you were. I mean, you were art director, which is levels above that. And so we kind of just made this role fit around what your skill sets were and like what you could bring to the table, which was just so much. I mean, it's changed how we operate completely. So you have agency experience, which was really beneficial to us as well. So
yeah, definitely. I think, and at my internship, I wasn't there for very long. So that's always been in the back of my mind. Like, what can I add to an agency, or like, how can I gain more experience from an agency setting? And the way that we're able to work with different clients and like have different, our hands in many different things was definitely something where I was like, I've got to at least try it and figure it out so that I can like cross it off and be like, it either is or isn't for me. So
I think what's so special about the conversations that just you and I have is the fact that like I started out as a marketing intern as a content producer. You were a content associate. It's just so you start at this certain level, and then the way to get to where you are now, any of us, is just so all over the place. There's no set direction, and I can't wait to talk about that with the rest of our team as well and share their stories. But I also love this idea, and really to hone in on what Engrained is and what people can expect to listen to is that grain in general is an accumulation of everything we've learned in our 20s from a skill set perspective, right? So through this broken road of internships and getting fired and trying new things and saying yes to things and figuring it out, I acquired all these different skill sets that now kind of speak to what Grain does as an agency. But there's just so much more to Grain than just the services that we offer. And there's so much context that we feel like we can speak to on so many different levels. And so we're just really excited to share that with everyone, to bring on the rest of the team, just kind of do one-on-ones. We have our next episode will go live next week. We have no idea what it's about yet, so you'll have to figure that out with us. But stay tuned.
All right. Yay. First one wrapped.